This week's podcast is sponsored by Vivo Barefoot Shoes. We've been wearing them for 6 years and genuinely they are our favourite shoes, and that is all we wear beyond being barefoot.
Yeah, they're really, really great. They've tons of different varieties. You get 15% off with the code HAPPYPEAR15.
And if you don't like them, what do you do, Dave?
You can send them back within 100 days and get your full money back.
Wow, so you've no risk.
No risk. Amazing, isn't it? Yeah. So if you're interested, vivobarefoot.com and the code is HAPPYPEAR15. Welcome to the Happy Pear Podcast. We're delighted to have you. I'm Dave.
And I'm Steve.
And this podcast is really to explore life, health, happiness, community, and how to have a better, more meaningful life.
This week's episode is with Dr. Dain Heer. Dain is authored and co-authored almost 20 different books, many of them best-selling books, from how to be a more authentic you to how to move beyond money, how to be an authentic gentleman.
And he's one of the founders of Access Consciousness, which is their platform which they help people raise their own level of consciousness. Really, this conversation was, we both went into it going, oh, is this going to be a self-help type talk? And really, it was honestly one of the most enjoyable conversations we've had on this podcast in more than 100 episodes. We cover lightness and how lightness is such an important quality that each of us can cultivate. Because as adults, we think we need to be, so serious and whatnot. But he talks about the reasoning about why lightness is so important.
We talk about how our feelings and energies are affected by those others, and the fact that you can return some of these, which was quite a bizarre topic. If you miss and go, what the hell does this mean? Trust us, this was fascinating.
And the final big takeaway was about your energy. He said we are all energy. Energy is what
it was conscious co-creation and manifesting, really, is probably the best label to distill it down
to.
It
was really how your energy is kind of reflected back out, and we are tuning forks within this experience called life. So huge amount of takeaways in this. You're going to absolutely love this. So without further ado, we give you the wonderful Dr. Dain Heer. Well, it's been really fun researching your work. You're very productive. I really admire your books. The range and diversity of books is really incredible.
Thank you. Yeah, well, let me tell you, it's an adventure. This whole consciousness thing gives you the ability to speak on anything. And we've been, I say we because me and thousands of people around the world have been exploring this, and I've been doing it for the last 22, 23 years now. And it's amazing when you go to explore an area, relationship, money or whatever, and start looking at what is actually underneath it that's creating the limitation, but also then the possibility beyond it of what we could actually choose.
And even I suppose that's a place to jump off. Can I jump off? I nearly bought one of your books a few years ago, and it was this handsome guy in a kind of like a suit and a shirt, and he had this kind of like doughy-eyed look, and it was about gentlemen. I was like, that's a book I want to read. And then when I see it's like, that's Dain, look at that.
That doughy-eyed gentleman.
And that's a topic that fascinates me. Last week, so we grew up here in Greystones, and last week there was a man up from the Gaeltacht. So the Gaeltacht is a traditional part of Ireland, not necessarily traditional, but they speak the Irish language, which is 3,000 years old. English is only 800 years old. And often the Irish language is very rooted to the landscape. It almost ties you. And I hadn't met someone like this man in years. And if I did, they were typically in their 80s. And that he had this real...
He was 28.
He was 28. He had this real gentle, soft, like all the time in the world type energy. And it was just like, oh my God, you don't meet people like you anymore. And one of the most notable characteristics was he was a man that was gentle and not a doormat. And I love the way you describe a gentleman being... It's nowadays we live in this binary world where it's good, bad, black, white, Republican, Democratic, but there's nothing in the middle. And I like the way you talk about gentleman, that it's a spectrum, and as a gentleman you can move between both of them, and that
what are both of them?
Both of them meaning on one end of the spectrum is the alpha male, the dominant, the
macho,
stand up, and then on the other side there's the snag, the sensitive new age guy. And I thought that was... Anyway, can we talk about being a gentleman, Dain? Just, you're speaking to two men here, and I think it's a very relevant topic.
Well, I also want to go back to what you were saying about the language of Ireland. It's like it is a connection with the land. There's such a communion there. And that's actually, interestingly, another aspect of a gentleman is they're willing to be in communion with all things. They don't try to do force over, domination over. It's like, hey, what is possible here and how can I contribute to that possibility is really what one of the underlying perspectives is. And so this idea of being a gentleman, a long time ago, it used to be okay for a gentleman to open the door for a lady as a sign of acknowledgement and respect. And now, I mean, my business partner did this. He opened the door for a lady in New York City, and she hit him with her purse, and she said, "I can open my own damn door," you know, and that speaks to what you're saying about the polarized world that we live in, where you're either forceful or you're a doormat. But in actuality, we're far greater than that. And, you know, and the interesting part is this conversation applies to ladies as well as gentlemen, but there's so few voices that are empowering men to be their gentleness, and to recognize within that is also their power and their potency. And so embracing all of it, embracing everything that we are, but not just in separate moments, but in the same moment. So for me, it's like I facilitate classes all around the world on all these different subjects, and I'm very present, and I'm very willing to be the dominant energy in the room. And that's really what it boils down to, is being the dominant energy, but not from a place of force and power over, but from a place of acknowledging what you know is possible, and being willing to be the energy, being willing to be the person, being willing to make the choices to actually create it. We need more leaders in the world, not more followers.
So
Yes,
like if you were to boil down, how would you describe a gentleman?
I would, number one, a gentleman is a person who likes the person looking back at him in the mirror. Number two, a gentleman is a person that is always looking for the greatest possibility, both for himself and everyone else, and recognizes that we're all interconnected. And unless we empower each other and contribute to each other, we're not going to create a greater possibility. We're not going to create a greater world together. And the key word there is together. And that occurs because a gentleman is somebody who truly has a sense of himself, not a defined, solid point of view that they have to project on everybody else, but somebody who actually has a quiet sense of themselves that doesn't need to tell anybody about them, doesn't need to get anybody else's validation. They're willing to acknowledge themselves to such a degree that it's not about what do other people think of me, it's what do I think of me, and how much do I like me.
It's almost like there's a kind of a spiritual element in it. It's something that moves beyond gender. It's something that just relates to all human beings, and we're just looking at it through the lens of the traditional gentleman. And I think that's beautiful, because
that it is beyond gender. But I think it is that kind of idea of someone who is who has a sense of self, but is also much more focused on the greater good. I think when you said that together thing really makes sense.
Yeah, it's moving beyond competition to co-opetition.
Ooh.
Yes.
No, it's quite a phrase. Or used that before.
He's used that one loads of times.
I like that one.
He's been rinsing that one for years. But it is a really interesting topic, because I read a book there recently. It was someone said there was a great book called Untamed by Glennon Doyle. I'd never heard of the lady. And I got the book on Audible and I listened to it. And it was a book for women. It was all about helping women to step more into their own power, into their own power and authenticity. And I listened to the book, and it was all talking to women, and I was, as a male, listening to it. I thought it was a wonderful book, and I read it and I thought, there should be a book written like this for men, because men are just as like struggling in their own identity in the current era of what it is to be a man, and where, you know, because even in our lifetime it's changed so much. Like, we grew up in a household where mom was the stay-at-home mom, and she looked after us, and dad went out and worked, and now in my house I do the cooking and I do more of the cleaning, and we both work and we both do everything, and it's just changed dramatically. And I think that I'd love to even have a little conversation about men, the masculine, and how some of the challenges and how we can overcome them.
Well, here's the interesting thing is there seem to be two different, and this is a gross generalization, of course, okay, but to make the point. Yeah, that is a definite, it's a big caveat, okay? But there seem to be almost like two different species on the planet if we're talking about men. There are the guys like you, like me, that are interested in personal growth. We're interested in seeing a greater world for everybody. And then there are the traditional males, if you want to call them that, even though I hate saying it that way, what has been typically seen as male or masculine. And the interesting part is it's the guys like you and me, the seekers of the world, that have been so disenfranchised because out there, and the reason I wrote the book Return of the Gentleman is because I had a friend, he was 22, he'd been attending classes, and we would have conversations at lunch, and he would ask me questions. And he turned to me one day and he said, I just want to say thank you. I'm like, for what? He said, for who you are. I'm like, well, that's awesome. Thank you. What do you mean? He said, well, you've shown me that it's okay to actually be a man, to actually be sexual, love sex and enjoy women in their bodies, and simultaneously empower women, but also not take shit from anybody and go where you need to go. He's like, I searched, and this is a millennial of magnitude. He's like, I have searched, I've done so many internet searches for how to be a man, and the only thing I can find is how to lie to women to get them into bed, or how to make all kinds of money so you can be in charge of everybody else. And I was like, wow, that's a bit limiting. And so we had some conversations with some guys. And so there are these men in the world that there's very little voice given to. So what this was about is like, hey, guys, look, you're different. You're not the typical doing the, let me put it this way. This idea that there seem to be two different species on the planet. So there are certain men, and what we tend to do is we learn growing up to lump people into boxes so that we can put them in a nice box and define them and accept them to whatever extent we will and reject the rest. And the difficulty is those of us that desire something different, that doesn't work for. And so what this is about is looking at what actually is, not going with the stereotypes of what has been, and acknowledging that we're different. We're not like our fathers. We're not like our grandfathers. And a lot of our fathers and grandfathers would have liked to have the freedom to be different than they were allowed to be, but the times were not such that that was possible. So here we are having a different conversation to awaken and enliven the gentlemen in the world that actually desire to function from that, fully also realizing there are going to be a lot of guys that don't, but they're also the ones that have perpetrated the stereotypes in the first place, and it seems to work for them. So, okay, fine. That doesn't have to matter if we're willing to know what we know and go where we would like to go and know that it's okay.
Yeah, I like that.
It seems like the gentleman is a person who can balance between their masculine side and their feminine side, and that they can be gentle when they need to be gentle, and then they can be protective and put down a clear boundary, and obviously, stand up for something when they need to.
And that's very not gender specific.
No,
gentleman, gentlewoman, same thing. I think it's just self-respectful human that has good boundaries and a good sense of self. So I think what we're talking about is far more universal than male, female.
No, but it's given the opportunity just to redefine the masculinity as opposed to being this male archetype of this macho man, and moving beyond that into something where it allows a man to show the feminine side.
Good one.
Yes.
So,
Beautiful.
And we've got to also get, though, truly not rejecting the masculine, because that's the other trap we get into in the conversation is, oh, I'm going to be an evolved male. I'm never going to use intensity when it's necessary. No, sometimes you got to say, stop that. We need to go somewhere else. You know what I mean? Like, there are times where you need to be willing to be that, and truly embracing it all, and recognizing that there's a gift in being willing to address what's going on with the appropriate response and the appropriate creative energy.
Yeah,
good one.
100%
Good one.
agree.
Okay, I want to move the conversation a little bit away from masculine and gentleman. That was very interesting, fascinating, great job, gents, world class. Okay, I'm interested at the moment. I believe that we are all radio towers. We're all radio.
What do you mean by that, Dave?
Let me expand it there, Steve. Now,
Thanks.
give me a sec there, right? We're all radio towers, and we are emitting a frequency, a vibration. We're all energetic creatures going along, living out from our subconscious. We're reenacting traumas and reacting to how we feel in each moment. And we're emitting some type of, you might call it a vibration, an energy, you might call it whatever the heck it is, a mood. And life to an extent mirrors back and reflects exactly what we emit. You know, as Albert Einstein had some kind of a really smart phrase that said, all life is energy. This isn't, you know, it isn't woo-woo. This is purely physics. That like, if you are emitting a certain vibration, you will only get
you're
that back.
paraphrasing Albert.
Well, that was
That's
a real,
great.
that was a dog of a job at it. It was a dog of a job
Einstein
at it.
paraphrasing.
Yeah. But anyway, I'd love to talk about energy and about that idea which I have, and I've certainly realised that when I feel like crap, I feel life gives me more punches and more digs, and whereas when I feel fantastic, a lot more people smile at me, a lot more good stuff happens, and the good tend to compound. And I think energy is something that managing our energy and all of this, I'd love to open up that box and dig around and root around a little bit. Are you up for it?
Wow, absolutely.
Over to you.
Off to me. Oh, the joy. Okay, so a couple things that can be very helpful. And I love that you say that. We're like radio towers, because that's exactly how it works energetically. The other side that we need to look at, though, is we're also a receiving radio tower. So one of the things that I found can be extremely helpful is recognizing that somewhere around 98% of your thoughts, your feelings, your judgments are not actually yours. And so if you'll ask, who does this belong to, when you're in the middle of yuck, stuck, or what the F, you can, if it lightens up at all, like let's say, you're having a great day and all of a sudden you get sad and you're like, wait a minute. And then what we do is, if we get that, we then look back over our day and look back to the point where we go, oh, it's probably because of this. But in actuality, so much of the time we're picking up the broadcast of other people's radio towers. And so you can let that go if you just ask, who does this belong to? Is it actually mine? If it lightens up, it's not yours, return it to sender. Because if it's not yours, there's not a damn thing you can do about it, because you can't solve it from within you, because it didn't start within you. So that's one tool I want to give people. And
so how do we know if it's, like I say, 98% isn't coming from us? So, part of me would go, geez, we got a whole load of microbes. I wonder, are they contributing? I'm sure they are in some shape or form. And say, for example, I'm in an environment where there's loads of people. Obviously, you can't identify who it was. And the logical human brain goes, oh, it probably happened because my mortgage, blah, 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 blah.
I think what Dain is saying here is that, like, lots of it is the programming which comes from your parents and your environment, that's what, it's not yours, that you're living your... I'm sometimes living your life because I see Stephen on my shoulder, my twin brother, going, Dave, you should be doing this. And then sometimes I have my mom on my shoulder going, Dave, you should be doing that. And that's like, is that what you mean by, it's not our stuff?
Both, actually. So in other words, because if you look at it, exactly that, it's like we've bought so much of who we think we are from our parents and our family before we could ever talk. And all of that was, guess what? That energetic broadcast frequency that they have. And so what we do is we energetically perceive basically the construct of their reality and how they function. And we go, oh, that's how they do it here. Cool. Like when you're a baby, you don't have a point of view about anything. You're just like, hey, feed me, please. Hey, I got a dirty diaper. That's it. But while that's going on, you're sucking up all of the points of view around you because they're energetic. Not just the things that we were told. A huge part of it is what people were being around us, which is why people tend to be like their parents. And then they become teenagers and they're like, I don't want to be like these people. So then they fight against them to try not to become them, but it's only because they already have become them. So we have that. So we have Dave on your shoulder, mom on the other shoulder, and then real time, though, there's another aspect of it, which is real time. Like, there are a lot of people who have what they call social anxiety disorder, which is basically a huge amount of awareness of the thoughts, feelings, and emotions and points of view of other people energetically that they don't know what to do with, because nobody's ever said, hey, it's awareness. It's not yours. And we inherently think that everything we're aware of is ours and everything we perceive as ours, but literally 98% of it is not. If you were to walk around as the being you actually are, would you have any thoughts in your head, or would you just be space and go, oh, there's that happening, there's that happening, there's that happening? And that's actually us. So you wanted to open the energetic box. This is one of the
it's
awareness.
It's almost like, as you're saying, opening this energetic box. It's like,
Can I go? It's also like the field as well. And I think the field is a fascinating concept.
Are you talking about the field out there, like the field for the cows?
I'm talking about the
energetic. What are you talking about?
The footy field, the cricket field.
The energetic field, because even we started our business, and we first started with a vegetable shop, and we worked in the shop for a number of years, and you quickly realized if you knew someone's name, they opened up and they were a lot more social with you, just by simply, how are you, Dean? Nice to see you. And you're going, he knows me. Cool. I can be a little bit.
It's Dain.
Dain. Okay, and be a little less guarded. Sorry, Dain, darling. So it can be a little less guarded, or it can be a little bit less guarded, and we can have the chats and we can connect. And often what I've noted is that, say I've forgotten someone's name and I can see them walking up the street, it's like, if I can just sit with it, and when they come close enough, I'll pick it off the field, and their name will come to me. If I can just trust and not panic and go, shit, I forgot their name. It's like, sit with it. And I'm reading this interesting book, can't remember the name of it, about this guy who grew up in an African tribe, and he was kidnapped at a young age, and he was being educated by a group of Jesuit priests in Africa. And he talked about how he'd be asked questions and he always knew the answer, and the teachers used to get so pissed off. It was like, are you reading my mind? And in his head he was like, of course I'm reading your mind. Like, why wouldn't I read your mind? Because he could read the field. And this bit always fascinates me. And is this a part of the element when you talk about being affected by people's energy? It's like the field is all around, and we're not necessarily taught how to break down, as in my field, your field, picking off this. Because I know when I'm around someone that's anxious, I feel anxious. When I'm around someone who's joyful, exuberant, when I'm around my kids and they're angry, oh my God, boom. So over to you again, Dain, sorry.
No, exactly that. That is exactly it. And, science is finally starting to describe aspects of this. And in psychology, psychiatry, they're talking about mirror neurons, and it's exactly that. It's in the field. And given that there is this field, see, we keep thinking that there's somehow this arbitrary separation between us and others based on, I have my body and you have yours, so we're obviously separate. No, we're not. We are part of the field, and yeah, we have these bodies. Cool. Let's use them. Let's enjoy them thoroughly. But it doesn't mean I'm separate from you, because I can pick up on everything in your head. And that's one of the other conversations that's fun to have for me with people, is acknowledging that people are psychic. You pick up things out of people's heads all the time. Like you said, when you're around somebody who's anxious, you get anxious. When you're around your kids, when they're angry, it's like, oh yeah, it feels like being boiled alive in oil. Okay, cool. Is that yours or theirs? And then there's also the ways that we've learned to respond, where we have this need of functioning from reactive realities, as though that is somehow creating the appropriate connection. But once again, that appropriate connection is what we learned to create when we were kids. And so part of getting to us is having the acknowledgement of these things, but also undoing the way in which we've decided we have to be reactive in the world and have this need of reactive realities rather than a sense of having choice. But if you're like, for example, if you take the past few years, how much stress was there in the world? And how much did we as individuals think, wow, I'm so stressed out. Oh, I'm hopeless. I'm this. Now, personally, I didn't, because I have these tools and I use them. One of the things that Access Consciousness gives you is a lot of tools to use in the trenches that actually work to get you back to lightness. Because when you're truly being you, you've got a sense of lightness. And that's us being us. Well, so if you're walking around picking up on the stress that 8 billion people are now having at an even higher level than it was before, that's if you're not willing to step beyond, see, because the field is one acknowledgement, but it's number one, it's not static. And number two, you can choose where you function, where you live. So if every 95% of people are like, and you start to go, and you're like, wait a minute, is that my or am I just aware of it? Okay, what can I choose? Like, who does this belong to? And everything I did to buy this as mine, destroy and uncreate all that crap. And now what would I like to choose? And so you can determine the field you function from, even with the awareness of the field of consciousness or oneness or whatever you want to call it that we're all part of.
So is it almost like creating, like what I'm kind of understanding it is that you're trying to we've got all this stuff which we picked up over our life, and you're going, right, what's mine, what's not mine? And, you know, you start to become aware of all these other impacts on your head and your voice and all these type of things. And you start to act from a point of conscious creation nearly. Like, that's obviously a bit of a woo-woo word, but it's kind of saying that you're actually just being much more intentional about what's yours and what do you want and what choices, in terms of my own moods, emotions and well-being, I am choosing in this moment. There's loads of stuff, bad stuff going on, but I want to react I want to keep my frequency high. So therefore, I'm reflected back with more good stuff rather than bad stuff.
Yeah. And why wouldn't we choose that? It's like and it's exactly that. It's actually having the choice. And the thing is, there's one thing to know that something else is possible, which I think a lot of us do if we allow ourselves to have the awareness. It's another thing to actually get there to choose that. And so I'm a big fan of giving people tools to get to that place where it's far easier to choose that lighter, happier place and space.
What's your favorite tool in relation to that for people? Someone listening who goes, I feel heavy as hell. I feel way down by the world. What's your favorite tool that someone could apply now just in search of more lightness?
Yes, lightness is a great thing to search for.
Yeah, well,
I totally agree. First thing is the one I gave you already, which is, who does this belong to? Is it actually mine? And if it lightens up at all, it's not yours. You don't have to know who it belongs to. What you're doing in that is acknowledging, oh, maybe it's not mine. Oh, it's not mine. Okay, well, if it's not mine, then what am I doing swimming in it? Because there's nothing you can do if it's not yours. Return to sender with consciousness attached.
And would it be almost like to journal it, like to write it down and go, is this mine? Is this pain within me mine? No, it's not. It's actually Paul's. It's Paul's pain. Yes, I'm Friedman. I better go give it back to Paul.
Paul, I got some shit for you. Hey, Paul.
No, sorry.
Dear Paul. Sorry, bro.
Here's your crap back. I'm free of it.
Yay. But here's the thing. It probably wasn't Paul's either. He just picked it up from somebody else who then, who he thought it was real. You're connected with him. So you start vibrating at that vibration. I mean, if you look at it, it's all vibration on one level. So it's like, where do you want to vibrate? And so in asking who does this belong to, it's like, okay, even just getting the possibility that it's not yours. And I love the thing of writing it down. For me, I want to do it as fast as possible though. So it's like, okay, I'll get the sense of, oh, yes or no. No, not mine. Okay, well, everything you did to buy that, undo that crap. And
and you'll just literally say this to yourself in your own head, not even out loud, or else go over to quiet corner and go, Dain, is this yours, Dain? No one's listening.
I'm gonna have a moment to myself. Dear Dain, does this belong? No? Okay, well then, no. I actually, when I got this tool, I was at a place where just previous, I had been at a place where I was going to end my life if things didn't change. I had a session of access consciousness, this stuff called bars. And in an hour and 15 minutes, I went from depressed and suicidal to grateful and joyful to be alive. And I was like, whoa, if it feels like this to be alive, I am in. And I always knew change should be able to be fast, but I'd never experienced it on that level. And so one of the tools that I got from the person that did this for me was this who does this belong to thing. And I was like, okay, how do I use it? And she said, well, for every thought, feeling, and emotion you have, just ask who does this belong to. If it lightens up, it's not yours. I'm like, okay, and then what? Well, just return it to wherever it came from. You don't have to know who it was. Okay, fine. So I went to dinner at my ex-fiance's house for Christmas. And during the course of that evening, what was running through my head like a mantra, even though I didn't intend it, was like, who does this belong to? Like every shift. Have you ever been at a family gathering, especially if it's not your family and they're not really that into you, but they won't say it, and it's just got all kinds of weird stuff that gathers
there's
over
loads
the
of energy. Yeah, it's just a weird energy. I think they made movies on that, like, Meet the Fockers and all that kind of stuff. Aren't those all playing skits on those?
Exactly that. And so here I am. And from the moment I walked up to the door, I could perceive that energy. I'm like, oh man, and I didn't know what to do. And the only tool I had in my toolbox was, who does this belong to? So as soon as I walked up to the door, I went, who does this belong to? And it lightened up and I was like, oh, that's cool. So I met the mom who does this belong to? Saw the dad, who does this belong to? Like literally, because I could notice a shift in the energy with each person. And I was in my mind, I'm like, am I crazy or is this actually happening? So anyway, as we go through the night, I probably asked, who does this belong to? Literally like a mantra in my head. I probably asked it a few thousand times. Every time the energy would shift, I'd just be like, who does this belong to? Because it would go, and I'd be like, who does this belong to? This person would talk. Who does this belong to? And I left there lighter than when I got there for the first time ever. And I'd been dating her for about 3 years. And so it was an interesting awareness of this stuff works on a really simple level if you're willing to not overthink it. Just like if it lightens up, if it shifts your vibe back to more lightness, it's not yours. Cool, stay there now.
It's a lovely way to focus like on more lightness, because it's a bit like, you know, people think of that word enlightenment and they go, oh my God, I've got to sit here and be perfect. And it's like, no, just be light. Like it's lovely, like light. It's like skip around like Tigger the cat or whatever. Like it seems more freeing and easy than, oh, I've got to sit under a tree with my legs crossed. Oh shit, my knees are sore already. Oh crap. You know, like it's, whereas enlightness is easier than enlightenment, maybe.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad you said that, because so many people who claim to be enlightened are not light. You know, they're not having very much joy. It's more like what we've been sold as, or I don't know, sold or however you want to look at it. But what seems to be out there is most people's version of enlightenment is they know all the right stuff and all the wrong stuff, which is judgment, which judgment never makes you lighter. Judgment always makes you heavier. And so most people, if somebody has to say they're enlightened, number one, you know, what is that phrase? If you see the Buddha on the road, shoot him or something. I don't remember, you know, because it's somebody claiming.
It's a bit like, hey, do you know there's a vegan in the room? Don't worry, they'll tell you.
Totally. You know, so it's like, and what if it, like you said, it's about the lightness. And if somebody says they're enlightened, they're trying to prove something that
they're trying to out-ego you. They're trying to get one up you.
Okay, I got a question here. Yep. It's slightly challenging. You're playing devil's advocate. Okay, we grew up in a world, at least the home and the kind of, a lot of our conditioning was like, just get on with it, push through it, come on, put a smile on that, turn that frown upside down. Not quite that, but like literally like, you know, positive mental attitude. And it was only, my wife's a clinical psychologist and she's all about the importance of expressing all emotions. Emotions aren't good or bad. Some are just heavier than others and there's a need to express them all. And if you don't express one of them, it'll express itself in you in a different way. And I thought, wow, that is quite enlightening to me. And something comes up when we start talking about this is like, although we're seeking a lightness, I believe there's a huge importance to express and to feel these more heavier, more weighted, more challenging emotions too.
But do we have to, like, we can feel them, but does it have to make us heavy and sad, or can we feel them and still?
But I also think there's a place for sadness. Sadness isn't bad. It's like it's like there's
thank
light
you, a
and
wise
day.
one. Thank you, a wise one.
I'm enlightened, Dave. Sorry, that
Sorry,
was a joke.
Back to you, Dain. Sorry, we're meant to be chatting to you. We're going off on ones here. Over to you, Dain.
I was just waiting to see where you guys went. It's beautiful. I love
we're
it.
riffing.
Let's do this. So well, let me put it this way. What's true for you will always make you lighter. A lie will always make you heavier. And so if we guide ourselves from that, so why am I saying that? Because it's the thing that we have to hide and suppress that ends up creating the heaviness and the stickiness. If, let's say you have anger come up. Well, if I have what seems like anger come up, first thing I do is go, okay, who's this belong to? Like, is it actually mine? And if it doesn't lighten up, doesn't go away, I'm like, cool, what am I angry about? And here's the interesting part. One time when it's appropriate to get angry is when somebody lies to you. And so I've had conversations and leave the conversation angry. And I'm like, okay, wait, is this mine? Or who's this belong to? It doesn't lighten up. And I go, okay, so first thing I go to is, what is the lie, spoken or unspoken? Once I spot the lie, the anger goes away. It's actually there as a tool to let us know that there's some lie involved. And so if we take that and if we get the, if we recognize that, like you said, I'm a firm believer with what you said. There's no such thing as a good or bad emotion. It's all energy. We look at it as energy in motion, or however you want to, you know, that's a cute little quip, but it's like, it's all energy. To the extent that we can stop avoiding these things, we can move right through them. Like if you experience sadness and you're like, whoa, this sadness. And rather than try to avoid it, rather than try to put up a wall or barrier, one thing that can help with anything going on, any emotion, any sort of, anything you have going on or anything that sticks you or anything you're trying to avoid is lower your walls and barriers. And number one, just be with it. Stop resisting it. Stop avoiding it. Because what we do in avoidance is we try to shove it out here like, no, I'm not sad. I can't deal with sadness. I'm not sad. But in that, we're telling ourselves a lie that we can't deal with this thing. There's not anything that we can't deal with. What ends up creating a heaviness continuously is when we try to avoid it and shove it out of our world as a way of trying to deal with it. And then it just accumulates all around us. And then it follows us day to day. So instead, if we'll lower our barriers, our walls, and I say it that way, that may make sense to people. In other words, we just stop trying to put up the walls to avoid it and protect ourselves. We don't need protection. We need presence with whatever is. And then there's another tool. Hey, another tool for you, which is, if you get an upset that you've had sometime in the last few weeks or that's still there, and it's interesting because, you go into interview mode and it's like, nope, don't have any problems, which is cool because it brings a lightness to everything. And yet there's not one of us that doesn't have something that's sort of sticking around. And all you got to do is get that energy, that yuck, the stuck, whatever it is that's sort of like, still sitting in your world, and just go, interesting point of view. I have this point of view.
Interesting point of view. I have this point of view.
So not resisting it.
Will you say it again? Will you say it again there again?
Or what you resist persists.
Yeah, exactly that.
Time to pay the bills now.
As we said, this podcast is sponsored by Vivo Barefoot Shoes. They're the only shoes we've been wearing for 6 years. And really, we wouldn't take someone as a sponsor unless we really believe in them. And this is a company and these are shoes that we've seen it in ourselves. Our feet have become more natural. They're stronger.
They're wider. I can isolate. There's this kind of movement called toga, which sounds funny and sounds stupid, but it's where you can isolate your toes and move them kind of individually. And through wearing shoes, at least there's even research from Vivo at universities that your feet muscles will typically improve by 60% within a number of weeks of just wearing barefoot
within
shoes.
100 days, I think
100
it is.
days,
so, and even think about it logically that in a house, the foundation or the base of the house is the most important bit which the structure sits on. And the same way we just wear shoes without thinking about it, yet our feet are the foundation. And when you've got them in shoes that actually encourage the natural kind of movements within your feet, it enhances every aspect of your anatomy.
Yeah. So if anyone does want to try them out, Vivo Barefoot are offering 15% off with the code HappyPear15, and you have nothing to worry about. They're offering a 100-day return policy. So if you don't like your Vivo Barefoot, you can return them free of charge.
Yeah, so check them out, vivobarefoot.com, full range of shoes for all the family, from formal to casual to kids, and everything in between. So 15% off, HappyPear15. Will you say it again? Will you say it again there again? It's interesting.
Yeah, interesting point of view. I have this point of view.
As in, like, I see it differently.
As in, rather than the positive or negative polarity, the alignment and agreement, yes, this is real, or the resistance and reaction, no, it's not, which is what sticks us. We're like, interesting point of view, meaning, okay, I can see the good, the bad, and the ugly of this. I don't have to resist it anymore. I can just be present with it. And it's an amazing tool to get to presence, especially with so many of the things that are going on in the world. And, I keep talking about tools. I talk about presence. I talk about lightness, energy, all of these things. And one of the things is there are several tools that it just takes too long to explain or get through that are actually really simple to use, that I use with people and that we use in Access Consciousness. And that's sort of where the meat of a lot of it is, because you can take one thing, you do, like, who does this belong to? Interesting point of view. But then we also have this thing called a clearing statement, and these ways of addressing these specific things that are deeply rooted and starting to pull them out so they don't stick you anymore. And this interesting point of view is one of the things that can be really helpful if people will use it to get you back to being you. And say it between 3 or 5 times. Usually the energy of that stuck thing just shifts because you're getting out of the resistance and you're getting out of having to make it real.
Interesting point of view. I have that point of view. Interesting point of view. I have that point of view.
I guess I know it recently, and say having discussions with my wife, and we often, as with anyone with an intimate relationship, you often see things quite differently. And I guess I grew up in a world where it was like, no, my point of view is correct. My point of view is correct. Whereas it's only in recent, whatever frame of time, it's like, no. It's really important that you hear her point of view and accept it, and that neither's right or wrong. It's just different, and that's cool too. And that it doesn't necessarily matter who's right or wrong. It's just both want to be seen. And if you're seen, it's like, oh, cool. That's great. I like blue. Yeah, you like red. Perfect.
And I like what you said there about stuckness, because I think so much of life we go through, and there's like some days where the sun is shining and it's just lollipops and sunshine and rainbows and the wind's at your back. And then other days you're just trailing through the muck, like, you know, you're wading through the muck and the wind's in your face and it's lashing rain, and then a bus comes along and it splashes you, and like, you know, there's days like that. So I think having a toolkit is really important of things that you can resort to in those days, so that you don't, you know, that you can turn the sun might come out, and you know, someone might give you a hand and pull you out of the muck and sit you down and give you a cup of tea and dry you.
And I think that naturally leads into a conversation about getting into a state of flow, because I think that's something that we all
and it's
desire
probably
as humans.
you know, like access consciousness is all about, I think ultimately it's about energy and about having a more free life where you can create your own life. And I think, like you used the word flow, there's so many different words to describe these same type of experiences. A bit like love can be described as beauty, as can be described as art, as words are just a gateway to an experience that each of us have.
Ooh.
There was no question there, but it's just over to you.
The question was, let's talk about flow. Let's talk about flow, getting into flow state and what flow state means. My understanding of flow is that where you're kind of almost removed from your logical thinking, and that you've almost... Okay, I read Surrender Experiment. I absolutely love that book. And I love the idea...
Have you ever read it? Michael A. Singer. Have you ever read that one?
No, haven't read it.
Oh, nice one.
Loved it. Absolutely loved it. But the whole idea was that he gave his logical, egoistic decision-making of life over to life. And he kind of just went with where life was pushing him. And his life was taken in ways he could not have fathomed were possible. And it's an amazing story. And I thought it was brilliant. And it's something that reminds me of the importance of surrendering more and to allowing life, God, divine, whatever you're believing in, to take you where you're meant to be. And I wonder,
and it's probably letting go a lot of what you think other people's things are, you know, the way letting go of that, so that there's more the truer sense of your being, who you really think you are, as per you wrote a book on it, is ultimately,
over to you, Dain. We're waffling.
Right? We're shutting up now.
No, I was just going to acknowledge exactly what you said. You know, letting life take you. And for me, it's like, you know, we've been taught that we need to control everything to get anywhere, and yet it's not fulfilling, it's not fun, it's not light. And when we're doing control, we eliminate miracles. And so for me, we talk about flow state, or there's a conversation in the world about flow state. And for me, that should be your state every moment of your life. And why are we putting it into, not antagonistically, but what if instead of putting it into I'm in flow and I'm out, and we can acknowledge that, but what would it take for our entire lives to be flow? You know? And so that's what I see showing up dynamically for a lot of people, and a lot of people that I work with, is at least a huge majority of their lives are pretty much in flow state. And so what's flow state? Well, when you're truly being you, when you're not being all of this crap that's not trying to make things happen that are not valuable to you, trying to make things happen that are not going to create greater for your future. I think flow state is an awareness of what we truly desire to create and being present as us while we do it. And it may not be as sexy to say it's when you're being you, because we all love a good challenge to overcome something to prove that we're getting somewhere. But what if you are the flow state? What if you're the flow state when you're actually being you? And I do realize that if I put it into a smaller lane, it's sometimes easier for people to grasp. Like, hey, I'm in flow, I'm out of flow. And I'm like, cool. Okay, so when you're out of flow, let's do these things. Because basically what that means is you're not actually functioning as you can or being you in that moment in the way that you can. So let's get you there, and let's have your whole life be flow.
Because I think when you like flow, when you're referencing it in terms of lightness and fun and playfulness and creativity and these kind of words which are typically associated to kids, which kids are typically in a much more flow state because they don't have all this adult responsibility and weight of the world on top of them. So I think there has to be an aspect of this within the toolkit that helps relieve this. This is not mine. This is the world telling me I need to be a grown-up. This is not mine. This is my father telling me I need to be successful. This is not mine. This is society telling me that I need to be X. You know, and I guess once you can drop all these and become a lighter, more playful, energetic expression.
Two words I think that really resonate with me in terms of flow is trust. There has to be a sense of trusting that, you know, your needs will be looked after. And two, I think presence they're two of the words that really stand out with me with the word flow state.
Well, and this is the thing is what I go to is how would you be as the being that you are? And I say being rather than just person, because person gets into all of the points of view we've adopted, you know, growing up, etc. But how would you be as the being that you are? That trust, that presence, that lightness, gratitude for everything, a sense of connection with everything, no need to separate, no need to judge, no need to make anything or anyone right or wrong, no need to control because of that trust. It's like, and then if you look at that, because one of the other elements of where people kind of try to put it into, I don't know, some airy fairy state or something, it's where it's not just about you get lightness. It's not at all about having that lightness from checking out or having that lightness from ignoring responsibilities or ignoring your business, ignoring your job. No, it's from being totally present with it as you and actually living your life on your terms. But when I say living life on your terms, that doesn't mean that you try to control everybody else into. What it means is you approach every moment from knowing you and what's true for you. And even that, it's so funny. There's so many caveats that I feel like I have to make because certain things are taken in a certain way that people assume, because there have been so many conversations about it, people assume it means this. But even living life on your terms, that's not controlling everybody else into fitting your terms. It's acknowledging them as they are and being present with everyone and everything with that level of trust.
It's lovely. It sounds great. It'd be great. Can we make that world possible? That's brilliant.
Yeah, right.
Do we just click our fingers? Here we go.
Well, I think flow state and
let's just do it. 3, 2, 1. We're going to make it possible. 3, 2, 1. Boom! What a world! Wow, this is so
glad
amazing.
We had this conversation.
I feel totally different. I feel so different instantaneously. Amazing. A miracle. An absolute miracle.
Can we talk about miracles?
Well, can we talk about one aspect just before we get into miracles?
Okay.
I wanted to talk about intuition, because I think obviously this fits in with flow state, it fits in with access consciousness, it fits in with all these various things, because I think, as we've discussed, when you let go of the stuff which is not yours, when you can be more present and you can be more light, you're probably more aware of that life is giving you these little signals and it's kind of subtly moving you along via something which often we use the word to describe it as intuition. And if people might kind of think that's a bit too a word, maybe it's impulses or ideas or things to move us and give us ideas. And I found it some of the best experience of my life have been when I've ignored what I thought I should have done and I've followed some crazy intuition and I've gone off on some Alice in Wonderland journey and it's led me to this incredible moment.
Hey, I'm absolutely with you on that. And for me, I would call it your knowing, the awareness that you know, but it doesn't matter what we call it. I mean, gut, follow your gut. I've worked with a lot of business people and we're having a conversation. I'm talking about knowing, and they would go, oh, you mean when I follow my gut? I'm like, yeah, what if you did that more often? Like, oh, okay. And it's an interesting thing when we have no reference point for something. We're willing to follow our knowing. We're willing to follow our intuition. We're willing to follow our gut into something new. After we've done it for a while, we're like, oh, this is all that's possible. But what if, this idea of intuition is something we all have, and the less cluttered that we get, the less cluttered with other people's stuff, but also the less, and when I say other people's stuff, not just sort of current time thoughts, feelings, and emotions, and the things we've been talking about, but the sort of life patterns that we've adopted as though they're ours that may not be. And the more that we access what's true for us and the less cluttered we get, it's like that intuition is everywhere with everything. And the funny part is the way we actually create, my sense is ask and you shall receive. Like, we'll get the idea of something we desire. We don't know how to make it happen. But if we're willing to go, hey, I would like this, universe, consciousness, God, spirit, whatever works for you, hey, help, please. Help make this a reality for me. And then, like you said, if you're willing to follow that thing that is the thing that makes no logical sense but lights you up, that's where the magic and the miracles occur. On to our conversation about miracles.
Nice segue. Smooth.
Hey,
he's a professional. He's a professional.
Learning from the best. And if we can look at also one of the acknowledgments that we do know, and see, we have an awareness of what certain things will create. We've just never been taught that we do. And we can look at it, and one of the ways to get to that awareness, because it's essential if you're going to actually have miracles, to choose beyond the need for logic as your justification for your choice. If we choose only according to logic and according to what makes sense for everybody else or even us in our past, we're going to eliminate the miracles, because we will only deliver ourselves what we've decided is possible. The universe, or whatever you want to call it, will deliver far greater than that if we'll just allow it to occur. And so one of the acknowledgments, circling back to this thing about knowing, is, and the acknowledgement that you have knowing is, think of something that you knew not to do that you did anyway. And it turned out just as poorly as you knew it would. So if we take that to the other side, if there's something that we get to do, even if it doesn't make logical sense, it's going to turn out as miraculously or more miraculously than we hope it will if we'll just follow it.
Isn't the whole concept of miracles is have an idea of where you want to go and don't be caught up on the road? Is it a bit like that? It's like, I want to walk to Texas. I know there's a whole lot of water in between, but I'm going to focus on it and I'm going to find a way.
And maybe on my journey, I'm going to somehow find a magic spell and develop powers to be able to breathe underwater. I'm being stupid now, but sorry.
You're reading too much Harry Potter, David.
Yeah, I know. I am actually.
Gilly-wee, baby.
Yeah! Another super fan! Love it. I love it. What is Madame Maxine's first name?
Madame Maxine, no clue.
Okay. Well, then we'll go on to something else.
Anyway.
Okay. I wanted to talk about International Being You Day, because all of what we've discussed today comes round to, as you've said many times, it's about becoming more yourself, and it's not the egoic version of yourself. It's the truest being version of yourself. And I know you've created a day on May the 22nd, which is really a celebration of being you. Could you tell us more about that?
Well, that is exactly what it is. And I wrote this book, Being You, Changing the World, that came out in 2011. And the emails that I got of people saying, oh my goodness, I realize I'm not wrong. I'm actually enjoying living. I am just a weirdo. I'm just different and it's okay now. And so on its 10th anniversary, we were exploring, my creative team and I were exploring, like, how do we get this into more people's awareness that it's actually okay to be you, it's a gift to be you, and you have all kinds of quirks and wonderfulnesses, and so do we, and how do we celebrate that together? And also, though, how do we give people some inspiration and invitation to be willing to realize it's not a weird woo-woo thing, it's just getting to be what you actually are. So we created International Being You Day, and that was in 2021. So this will be the third International Being You Day. And it's on May 22nd. We do something different every year. The first year we had 8 hours of straight videos. Last year we did several. Yeah.
No, sorry, you're going to go 8 hours of straight video. I'm sure it was an amazing video. I'm sure it was amazing content.
It was not just one video. It was all kinds of
8-hour movie.
hours
Oh my God. Sounds like a long haul flight.
just hang out, everybody. Just be you. Okay. Be you.
We need
for
7 hours.
That's
and
what
59 minutes
great.
left,
You
folks.
should be really. It's and this year we're gonna do something even different. And but what it's really about is like just hang out, check it out, and experience some cool people who have a different take on what it's okay to be, like in a really cool way. Like there are a lot of these people that are empowering people around the world to actually start to enjoy their lives. And it's cool to hear some of their stories and their conversations, but also some of their unique, having been in the trenches, exploring what it is to be them and facilitate other people sometimes. There's some cool life hacks that come out of it also. But what people have said after the day is, so many people have said, it's like, I've got so much more lightness. I feel like I'm actually okay. I'm not wrong, but more than that, it's like I'm ready to actually create my life, and I've got a sense of what that can be now.
Sounds great. Sounds brilliant.
Yeah, like
it's really fun.
Okay, tell us about El Lugar. I know that's a passion project of yours, which really lights you up, and you're delighted about it.
The place.
And tell us all about it and inspire us about this incredible place in Costa Rica that you have brought into reality as part of a miracle.
I love it. It actually is. It is an actualization of a miracle and a miraculous request. My friend and business partner, Gary Douglas, wrote a book that he entitled The Place. And in it, he verbally describes the magic that is available, the miracle that's available when you're in communion with each other and nature. And this guy who doesn't believe in any of this stuff gets exposed to what's actually true for him. It's so beautiful. I dare you to read the book without crying. Okay. It's just, there's a level of acknowledgement in there. And so Costa Rica is a place where we've gone and done events for many years. And at one point we were like, what would it be like to have a place to do our own events? So we started searching for a property. After looking at over 100 properties, we came upon this place. And when we went to see it, we were driving in, it's like, wow, this place is beautiful. And it feels so nurturing. And we said to the lady that found the property, who works with us, we said, this is so beautiful. She's like, oh, this is the ugly side. This is the ugly part. I'm like, what? So we crossed the bridge and she was right. I mean, and so we are building a resort, but if you've ever been to Costa Rica, they have these wonderful things that they call eco resorts. And what they mean by that is they're giving you the smallest towel. They won't heat the water. You've got one LED light that's like 15 watts and you can't even see your toes when it's on. Welcome to the eco resort, And so eco equals cheap in a lot of places around the world. Now, I know people are going to hate me for saying that. And
that's their stuff, though. That's their stuff, Dain. It's their stuff. It's not your stuff.
Don't worry about it. Who that belong to? Interesting point of view. And the reason I'm saying that is because what we're doing is we're building in communion with nature. And so on the 112 acres that we're building on, we said no tree is to be cut down. And we've lived up to that. Okay. And we're going to have, I don't know, I guess 100 casitas, something like that. Or no.
100 casinos.
Anyway.
Casitas. Little houses. Yeah. I was just making sure I didn't hear casino.
And what we're doing is we're building it with a sense of elegance, but also in communion with the land. And so it's interesting because it's a construction site, but you can already stay there because we, in addition to building the casitas with the flow of the casas, the rooms, let's say, with the flow of the land, we've had the grass taken and, sorry, I get so excited, my ADHD kicks on and then I can't carry on a sentence.
You're doing
we've
great,
had
Dain.
Landscape. We started a nursery 2 years before we started construction. And so it looks like it's already completed in all the areas that are done because it actually is. And people don't build this way. One of the other things was when we went to build it, we said, hey, here's what we want. And several of the architects and engineers said, okay, well, we're going to have to take off the first 3 to 10 feet of topsoil because of this area. And we said, no, we're not taking off topsoil. And they're like, you have to. We went, we will find a different way. So we found a way of digging pylons into the ground and building it on platforms, kind of like they do in Venice. And so there's the eco-friendly aspect of this is really about doing it in concert with nature, and realizing nature knows what it's doing. Let's follow that. But also we found a way of creating electricity that provides almost no environmental impact. We found a way of heating water by extracting the heat out of the air. The benefit of that is that also provides for the air conditioners also. So we heat the water and we create air conditioning simultaneously. So the environmental impact is so low just based on electricity. Also, we found a way of doing a septic tank that uses plants.
Oh, yeah,
and so, I mean, and not only that, but it's elegant. It is designed with elegance in mind. So it's eco-elegant in a way that I've never seen anything that's like it.
Not cheap towels, not cheap small towels.
And not
no
cheap
15-watt light bulbs.
That is true.
Nice.
Sounds cool.
Sounds really cool.
Good on you, Dain. Pretty cool. That sounds great. Yeah. Love to go. One day.
Come.
Yeah. One day we'll make it. One day.
I spent a month.
You know.
You spent a month.
I spent a month there like 20 years ago wandering around in search. I remember spending time on it was an international rainbow gathering. So it was like a month in the woods living with all these, other idealistic, other half-naked humans. And it was a very interesting experience. It was interesting.
It was an interesting month.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, 20 years ago. Quite informative. This has been a great conversation, Dain. It really,
great crack. As we say in Ireland, you're great crack, which means good fun.
Crack is the Irish word for fun. So great fun.
Thanks, gents.
Yeah. Light and fun. And there's some really great takeaways there. Like, I love your question of whose is this? Like, who does this belong to? I think that's so practical.
Return to sender.
Yeah, I think it's so really good. And then point of views. And then how do we live our life with more lightness? How do we live with more lightness? And, enlightened, like just enlighten us. I think it's beautiful. I think it's really, really nice. And play.
Thank you. It has been a pleasure, gentlemen. It truly has been fun. Thank you.
Yeah. Hopefully we see you again, Dain.
And people can learn more. Access Consciousness. That's your...
And Dr. Dain Heer.
And you've 10,000 facilitators or something. You've been working hard for quite some period of time, Dain.
Yeah, true story. And and go to drdainheer.com. It's a little easier to navigate because we have so many facilitators and so much going on at Access Consciousness. So.
Okay, brilliant.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Dain. Mind yourself. Good luck with all. Cheers.
Thanks, you too. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
That was such fun. Genuinely, like, when we started, maybe we were feeling a bit tired. We were kind of like, are we going to be talking all self-help, heebie-jeebie? But it was such a laugh, such crack.
Such a good reminder. I find it such a good reminder, like reminding of lightness. Like, I am so into that idea of enlightenment instead of, because certainly people who are more spiritually inclined, this idea of enlightenment, it's this...
reaching this destination.
Yeah, whereas just lightness, it's like kids are light, they're free, they're full of fun and joy. And it's like, how can I cultivate more lightness as an adult? More joy, more play, more not taking it serious, because there's no proof that life is serious at all.
And great reminder that we're kind of these kind of radio frequency towers, and like what we emit, we tend to attract.
Yeah. So I really hope you enjoy that. And also I think the huge takeaway for me is, if it's not your business, don't pick it up. Like, send it, return to sender, which I think was a great one. So yeah, Dr. Dain Heer, brilliant, really, really good. He's written nearly 20 books or co-authored them. And Access Consciousness is one of his main tools and platforms. So if you want to learn more about him, it's very easy to find out more about him. And
his retreat center in Costa Rica sounds pretty insane.
Yeah. Brilliant. So, thanks, Mel, for your attention. We really appreciate listening to this podcast and for your support. If you want to support this show, just share it on to other people and help spread the word, because
we love it.
Yeah.
And we're so grateful.
Yeah. Or you could give a 5-star review on wherever you listen to your podcast.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Yeah. So thanks, Mel.
Thanks. Wishing you a great day. Bye. Bye.
Bye. Cheers. Bye.